Hello, Scott. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. And just like I mentioned earlier, thank you so very much for being here. Thank you so very much. I truly appreciate it. And you see, Scott, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two main things. And I do this so often because I feel like it is very important. So, firstly, Scott, I want to say thank you for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself and because you dedicated your time, energy, and resources, to becoming this beautiful person that you are. And oftentimes, Scott, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. I just walked past it. But you see, just recently, Tom, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the tree, you see. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me. Because now, the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it. Beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. It looks so beautiful. It was a very, very special moment for me that day. I was so, so excited, as though I won the lottery. Here is my point. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming an amazing person. Oh man, that alone has made it really impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you see you got a request from me to be on the show. Because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your impact, the impact your work is making, your philosophies, your insight. Oh, they're amazing. And I said to myself, I've got to benefit from this beautiful things Scott is doing, and not only me, but also the audience. And here we are with the great and amazing Scott. So thank you so very much for investing in yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was
Thank you.
nothing I could do about it. Thank you so much, Scott.
My pleasure. Really glad to be here. That's a great introduction. I love the I love the transformation of the mango tree because that's really what we're talking about today is transformation.
That's right. That's right. And thank you once again. So let's get started, Scott. You see, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a chaotic situation or a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. And not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, Scott, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very, very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Scott on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Scott, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I'm totally convinced that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Scott, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about a personal or professional journey. We are just so curious right now. We want to know how Scott got here. Then afterwards, I've
Well,
got
thank
some
you.
beautiful questions for you. Okay, Scott, over to
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, I've had several journeys in my life, I think, and the one that's occupied a lot of my time is in uh, starting businesses and selling businesses and managing businesses, and I've spent a lot of time, probably more than I should have, in business. And I'm also the author of two books. I just completed a book called "You're Not Toast," which is a guide to recovery from burnout, which a lot of my clients, who are typically entrepreneurs and leaders generally, suffer from burnout at some point in their career or another, where they discover that they don't have the energy or the enthusiasm or the inspiration that they used to have, and it can be deeply, deeply concerning, almost paralyzing. So the last chapter of my book, if you will, or the last chapter of my life so far, anyway, is writing this book, "You're Not Toast," and trying to get a message of hope out to leaders who, from time to time, experience burnout, and to let them know that there is a way to recover quickly and permanently from burnout, and actually to live even better than ever before, even before burnout.
Amazing. And that's a very, very important topic. And I'm so glad that we have someone with solution. That's a beautiful one. Okay, so let's pick the first question from there. And it's a personal one. How did you overcome burnout and create the burnout breakthrough method? You get it?
Well, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yeah, it's um, I'm very fortunate. I would say blessed to have recovered from burnout, because even though I am a licensed mental health therapist, and even though I've spent many, many years of my life working with leaders on both achieving great things and also recovering from challenges, I there's relatively little written about burnout. There's a lot about the fact that people are burned out, but there's not very much written about what do you do about it to recover. And even though I went to graduate school and have been in private practice for a long time, I couldn't find very much about how do you really recover from the exhaustion and sometimes the despair of burnout. So I did a lot of research, and I tried everything I could get my hands on. Any little suggestion or tip or trick I could get my hands on, I tried myself, and a lot of it didn't work. To be honest, I would say most of it in the beginning didn't work, but I was able to stumble into some things that thankfully did work, to my surprise. And I began to build sort of a catalog of things that did work. There's some research, considerable amount of research conducted by um, Dr. Christina Maslach at the University of California, Berkeley, who's probably the leading authority on workplace burnout today. And her research was extremely helpful. But so much of what I've learned about burnout is that the treatment of it is counterintuitive. The things that most of us as high achieving persons do to overcome burnout actually make it worse. Typically, we work harder and try harder and worry more, hoping that that will restore our energy or our inspiration or enthusiasm. But in fact, working harder and trying harder and worrying more actually can make burnout even worse. The obvious answer to most people come up with to burnout is, well, I've got to take time off. I've got to relax. I've got to recover. I've got to regain this flame that I once had. And while that's true, it's not true in the way that most people think of it, because we've had clients that have taken a week vacation, a month vacation. We've had several clients who have taken 6 month sabbaticals. We've even had clients who have sold their businesses thinking that that's what they had to do to recover from burnout. And in fact, that's not only will that not work, but in fact, in most cases, it almost always makes burnout even worse than it was before. So my own discovery of some things that worked was through a lot of trial and error, mainly error in the beginning, and tried lots and lots and lots of things which did not work, but which seemed to me to be the obvious answers. And it wasn't until I started trying things that were very counterintuitive that I finally began to make some progress and ultimately break through my own burnout.
Wow. That's amazing. And I love the fact that you overcame it and now you're putting the solution out there for folks who are stuck in it to also come out of it. And that's one of the traits of a true leader. I love it. Okay, so let us get personal a bit. What then made you to decide to help others overcome burnout? Like I mentioned earlier.
Well, it's burnout is just it is so really scary, because one of the first things that happens, the first thing that most of my clients notice is that they wake up morning after morning exhausted. They wake up expecting to feel refreshed from a good night's sleep, but over time, what they discover is that they wake up as exhausted as they did when they went to sleep. And the concern ultimately is, um, maybe today will be the day that I don't have the energy or the guts or the grit or whatever to go to work. What if I can't get up and do it today? Because most of the people that we work with are leaders in one way or another, whether in the for-profit or not-for-profit world. And and if they don't get up and answer the bell and go to work, then bad things will happen. And that's kind of the worst fear that most of our folks have. And I had that myself. It got to the point where I was really afraid whether one day I just wouldn't be able to get out of bed, and then the wheels would really fall off, not only my business but my life. And so once I began to experience relief myself from trying some very simple but very counterintuitive things, the first thing that I wanted to do was to share some of these ideas with some of my clients in my mental health practice, to see if some of the things that were helping me could help them, because I tended to attract clients that were a lot like me, that were business leaders, not for profit leaders, high achievement people, but who were going through a lot of anxiety, depression, and ultimately burnout. So to begin with, I would discover one small thing, and then I would share it with clients who were willing to kind of do this experiment with me. And ultimately, we began to get some traction. I started to feel better. My clients started to feel better. And we started a small group of leaders that we would meet in my office once a week. And we would share our experience with some very basic techniques. And part of what I noticed was that not only were these techniques working, but that there was hope for a lot of people who had given up hope, who really thought their careers were over, or their lives were almost over. But when they were with other people that they could see were getting better, that had been through this exactly the same thing, but were feeling a lot better and were waking up in the morning excited instead of defeated, then we started to gain some traction. And that one small group led to several other groups, ultimately to Zoom groups, nationally and internationally. And then out of all of the practices that we tried and that were successful, came the book You're Not Toast, which we're publishing this month, which is a complete guide to all of the things which did work. And that are proven to work by thousands of leaders who have been through our process.
Wow, that's amazing, Scott. And now I see why you're so good at what you do. Oh boy, that sounds like a very effective technique. And that's a great word. Okay, talk to us about the R and R technique. And how does it help with burnout?
Yes, I'm really happy to share this. And I also want to say that if there's anybody who's listening to this podcast who wants to get some help right now today, that's really our mission, is to try to connect people with techniques that work and can work right now, today, immediately. So if there's anybody on this call that wants to get some quick help and to get some techniques that really work and to get moving right now, we have a website called fastfixcall.com. And if you go to that site, you can schedule a quick call, 10 or 15 minutes with one of our coaches. They will take a quick history of where you are in your burnout and then give you some techniques that you can start using right now that are proven to work. That's the most important thing, I guess, I want to leave with anyone listening to this podcast, is that there is hope. And in spite of all of the struggle that you may have been going through or may be going through today, you really can recover quickly and permanently by doing some things that you probably have never considered. A good example of this is the R&R technique, which you mentioned. And in fact, if people will go to fastfixcall.com, we can send you a quick recording. But the R&R technique, I really discovered initially in a book by a gentleman named Michael Singer, who's one of the most powerful and knowledgeable writers I know. He wrote the Untethered Soul, among other things. And in one of his books, he had a suggestion for a very quick and easy way to relax and release, he would say, stress, in just like a 5 minute process, or 5 second, I'm sorry, process. And in reading this book, I was so desperate to try anything. I tried this technique. And what I found was that, as simple as it is, in only 5 seconds or 10 seconds tops, that it really is possible to identify that I was feeling overwhelmed and stressed and release it on the spot. And what I've discovered since then, not only through Michael Singer's work, but also Dr. Maslach's work and lots of other research, it's the technique of noticing that you're upset, noticing that you're disturbed, that really makes the difference. What high achievement people tend to do is ignore or avoid the fact that they're feeling stressed, because that allows them to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. So it's counterintuitive to stop and even notice that you're feeling disturbed for any reason. And yet, that is the key. And so, in total desperation, I tried Michael Singer's technique, the R&R technique, and it was just incredibly helpful. And so, what we suggest that our clients do is, instead of trying to take a vacation once every 52 weeks, which a lot of us have trouble doing, and it's stressful to plan to go to it and it's stressful to return from it, what we found instead works a lot better, and there's a lot of science to confirm this, is to take many 5-second mini vacations throughout the day. And the key to it is to notice when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling burned out, anxious, or depressed, and to notice it in the moment. And that is counterintuitive for most of us high achievers to spend any time noticing that, because our tendency is just to ignore it and move on. But if you can spend 5 seconds just noticing the feeling you have in your body, uh, the to identify where physically you're feeling the stress, then to inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and visualize the stress leaving. Now, this sounds like a nothing technique that couldn't possibly help. But if you practice this as often as you feel disturbed, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, it only takes 5 seconds to do it. But what we've seen is that while this one technique isn't the entire cure for burnout, it can really help you get you on your way. And what we have found with our clients is that within 5 or 10 days of doing this, usually much faster, they notice a significant relief and they begin to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel and experience some hope. So the whole idea here is that, instead of waiting for the opportunity for a full blown vacation, instead, to take a 5 second vacation, take a mini vacation many times a day. And if your listeners will go to fastfixcall.com, we'll send you a recording of how to practice this technique and lots of other techniques as well.